Hello, hello, hello. Hi, welcome. I am Sylvia Hayes, and you are watching Good News at Primetime. Today, our topic is Dads after Juneteenth. Dads after Juneteenth. You know, we just finished celebrating Juneteenth yesterday and celebrating the emancipation of slavery. And also, we just got through celebrating Father's Day, which was Sunday. So we combining the two, dads and emancipation. Okay, so our topic is dads after slavery, after Juneteenth. Okay, so even though we had dads, going doing what they normally do, well, they tried to during slavery, but after slavery, it was really hard for them to really have a family and do what they need to do to support their family. So there were a lot of struggles. And we're going to talk about those struggles that the men had to go through. Even to this day, men are struggling to be a good dad. Some of them are great, but then there are some who still have their struggles. So we're going to talk about that today. And also, happy Father's Day to all of those fathers who didn't get a chance to say who didn't get a happy Father's Day. And kudos to all of those fathers who's doing a good job, who's doing their best to be a good dad to your children. Okay. Also, before we get started with our show, I got to mention my book, Power Thoughts, Empowering You to Be Successful in Life. In that book, it is some things that will help fathers. Of course, it's something that will help the mothers and the children as well. A very powerful book. It will enhance your life tremendously. So you want to go ahead and get that book if all possible. You can go to AandKProductions.com, AandKProductions.com, and get that book. Of course, you can always Google Power Thoughts by Sylvia Hayes and get it that way as well. Power Thoughts by Sylvia Hayes. Just Google the book and you can get it. It's worth it. Every penny of it. So we're going to just go ahead and bring on my co-host so we can get started on this topic. Hey, Reggie, how are you doing this evening?
Oh, I'm doing great. Outstanding. It's really good coming off Father's Day, Juneteenth, Jubilee celebration weekend. Feeling good. A lot of great accomplishments. And I'm looking forward to, chopping it up a little bit tonight on that topic, one of our favorite topics, Black men and Black people. So it's going to be good. Definitely encourage everyone to like us and subscribe over here to Square Mile Media Atlanta. Hit that notification button. And, you know, uh, when I think about Father's Day, I had a good Father's Day. I'm still down here in Jacksonville with my dad. He's in there taking a power nap. Find out when you hit that 9-0, you usually go to bed somewhere between 8 and 9.
Yeah.
So we've had some good times and fellowship and things like that, and even talked a little bit about Juneteenth and went over some historical references and got a lot to share on that. And I think this year, uh, being what this is really maybe the second year of it being an official federal holiday.
Yeah.
Uh, I celebrated Juneteenth before it became a holiday, and then the first time I ever heard of Juneteenth, it was over 30 years ago. And then I had a break. I was down in Noonan, Georgia, and I was wondering what they were doing. And fast forward to isolated places and spaces that we that we would do our celebration. And this year was kind of unique because Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then the 19th was actually fell on the Monday, and that's the third Monday in June that makes it a federal holiday.
Oh,
And
really?
this is actually the same time period it was in 1865.
Ah, okay. I
So
didn't
you
know
have
that.
to Yeah, so you have to imagine they got the news on a Monday.
Mm.
Mm.
Okay.
So you think about that, you say, okay, well, uh, what were they doing? And you know they were working.
Yeah.
That you know they was working. And Monday morning, you get the news that some slaves had gotten earlier because it had slavery was supposed to be officially ended in 1863, but they carried
Mm-hmm.
on for a little while over in Texas. But I will go into that. But so this year is kind of interesting.
Yeah, it is a little interesting that they had a lot of activities going on this year,
Oh yeah,
versus last year where it was a little cool, slow, because of the pandemic the past couple of years, everybody was staying in and not doing a whole lot. But this year, a lot of activities was going on. Not that I really got a chance to enjoy any of it, no more than watching television. But, I saw the parade on television, so that was enjoyable. But people are celebrating now, and it's not just black people. Other nationalities are taking over too. Well, I ain't gonna say taking over, taking knowledge, of what's going on. Taking advantage of the holiday that's being off, paid.
right.
Yep.
And that's one thing when they made it a federal holiday. Uh, in a way, I'm kind of caught in the middle because when it was when you think about Juneteenth, what it meant to black people first. Okay, when uh, when they came on that Monday, and General, I forgot General Granger, put that order out, said that they were free. Just imagine what was on their mind.
Yeah.
Now you're free. One of the first things that black folk wanted to do even after the emancipation in 1863, but even more so after the last group of, and that wasn't really the last group because, they had other things going on. But when the last group, when they say, we ain't free unless all of us free. We ain't free unless all of us are free. And one of the first things that they wanted to do, the enslaved captured Africans, one of the first things they wanted to do was find their family member.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the first
Exactly.
things that they wanted to do because you got to think about it. What happened, one of the reasons Texas, the Lone Star State, is a reason for that name. One of the reasons that you had a lot of slaves that were also shipped to Texas because when the Civil War was ending and the South found out they were losing, they wanted to regroup again. So they was going to recreate the Confederacy in Texas,
Mm.
labor. So you got to think about what happened. Not only were slaves that had been here from the continent, but they had been here a long time, and they were either what they would be called Georgians, South Carolinians, Alabamians, and Mississippians. Well, some of them were uprooted and sent to Texas to work because the big thing was we got to get this we still got to make some money off the labor. And the so-called white people of the day, they would always come up with something smart, a way to give some backlash. Okay, well, we're going to keep some of our slaves, we're going to work them in Texas. They might have troops in Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, but they hadn't got out to Texas. So for that long period, they worked them and they made money off the efforts of that slave labor.
Yeah,
Now,
I remember hearing. I remember hearing reading that when the slavery was over, slave owners took that stuff. There are people that moved, but I didn't realize that's where they took them to, Texas. I remember
Oh
reading
yeah,
that. Yeah, they took
yes,
them to Texas, huh?
yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
because you got to think about it. Uh, Texas, the South, and the United States itself was using that as a bargaining chip in a way because the United States still was kind of a paranoid country. They was thinking somebody gonna invade them because you just had the most powerful battle on this side of the coast. They killed more people during the Civil War than any other war. That was a violent war,
Mm,
and a lot of
yeah.
these people were killed. And one of the things was the people in the South said, "We're gonna rise again." So as they knew they were losing, a lot of them started migrating towards Texas. And you know who and what they took with them? Their property or former property.
Yeah.
And they was thinking about rising up again. So Juneteenth, Jubilee Day, it has a great meaning because the people once they uh, got those orders or whatever, and plus people were already in position to be free. It's not like everybody didn't know they were free. Okay,
Right.
sometimes they portray it like, man, these were just a bunch of folk. They were so kind of slow. They didn't know this or whatever. Uh, but because of the conditions they were in and the situation at the time, uh, they were in that situation. So when they did get some type of confirmation that they were no longer enslaved people, one of the first things they wanted to do was find their family. That was the first big black family reunion. They went to find their family member.
Right. Yeah, and I can imagine that because there was a lot of men had a lot of children back then, and I was thinking that even though I said
As
that,
were
my,
on duty.
huh?
As were on duty.
Yeah, but what I was thinking, not to be bashing them or anything, but the black male was used as a stud, to
Oh yeah.
impregnate more women and to, so they can have more slaves. So I was just wondering how many children were they actually looking for? Were they trying to find all of their children or what? That's what's going through my head, since
Well,
they
well,
fathered so many.
yeah. Well, you got to think about it like this: because slavery during the Civil War, I think the Civil War started around 1860, but prior to that, they had outlawed slavery around the globe, at least transporting slaves.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
one
that's
of the
why they
things,
started doing that.
yeah, because you got to think now these slave owners. It's just like, and I don't want to belittle it like this, but just like if you were raising chickens and they told you that you couldn't get no more chickens or the price of chickens went up, what do you think you're gonna do?
Start raising your
You're
own
gonna try
chickens.
to get more chickens. Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's what happened, and that's where the inbreeding of of you know, they didn't really care whether it was a sister and a brother, a daddy and his daughter. You know, they didn't care. They just wanted offspring, and that
right.
offspring produced a lot of people. We talk about how many people died coming over because they lost a lot of people. I think estimation over 20 million slaves got lost in the water in
In the
transport.
war?
They got lost in the water in the transportation.
Oh yeah.
They died coming over here. Over 20 million black folk were killed or died coming over here. So they said, "Man, we losing a lot of people. We losing a lot of bodies. So we're gonna
Mm,
change this. We're gonna start. It's just like and it's somewhat today. It's just like if you are a foreign person and you come over to the United States and you get pregnant, guess what? Every baby you have is automatic a U.S. citizen.
yeah,
off
Yeah.
the rip. So it would make sense. You said, well, instead of bringing my whole family over here, I'm just start having babies, and that's
Yeah.
what happened. They started populating, and that did take a somewhat of responsibility off of men, especially black men, because they were being used as breeders. So you didn't
Mm-hmm.
have time to build a relationship with your kids, your children, like everybody else.
Yeah, just to throw this in now, after they passed a law that you couldn't import slaves anymore, then sometime after that, when they would start breeding within, the slave master might get somebody from another farm,
Oh yeah,
plantation, and use him to
yeah,
impregnate his people. I
right.
mean,
Well,
they would breed them just like you breed a dog. You
yeah.
know,
Well, and you got to think now. These are the conscious slave owners. They would use the biblical text and say, you know what, we can't. It's just not morally right to have a daddy impregnate his daughter or a mother to have sex with a son. So we're gonna go over to the next plantation and let them do this, intermingle, and this kind of pacified their consciousness, even though it was still wrong because it just mixed up uh the gene pool.
yeah. That, in addition to the slave owners making a whole bunch of babies too, them and
Oh
their
yeah,
overseers,
yep.
so everybody in the baby
Everybody
making business.
participated. Oh yeah, yeah. It got in. Only time they got rid of a baby if a black man accidentally got in there with uh Miss Ann in the house. Now, if they knew that a black man had got with that baby, they're gonna kill that baby. And
Mm-hmm.
they're gonna kill that black man. So you got when we can take ourselves and put ourselves in a mindset of that time period, we can see why some of these things linger on. When you think about black fathers today, we constantly have to fight that stereotype of just go out and make babies, okay?
Yeah.
Because that was indoctrinated into us, and to a point where even when you fast forward into what we call the 20th century, from 1960 on, when men would get with women, have babies, and then they started the welfare system, and they said, well, uh, if you're gonna get this check, you can't stay in the house. You say what?
Yeah.
No, if you're gonna get a check, he can't stay in your house. Well, our house, because we giving you a house, but he can't stay in there. And that's why a lot of white men uh did not opt in to get on welfare or have or they choose to live in a trailer park or somewhere and not live in government house.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Look.
Because if you live in a trailer park and your wife or your girlfriend got a check from the government, it wasn't like she stayed in public housing. You know what I'm saying? So they might still give you the check, but if you lived in the housing that they gave you, you definitely couldn't bring the man there. And that meant that men were sneaking in there, sneaking out. They got to leave by 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock. And a lot of that was going on. But a lot of men, black men, in spite of all that, still managed to raise their family. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In spite of all these systematic built-in processes to limit or manage or control the actions and efforts of black people, we've always been resilient enough and bounce had the bounce back ability to get up out of some of this stuff.
Yeah. And I think that where the men couldn't be in the house, I think that was a way to break up the families. That was the thing, break up the families so we wouldn't populate as much. I think that's what it was. You gone mute.
Uh, yeah, I'm back.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think it was just to keep them to being populated, because a lot of black men, they wanted to be in the household. a lot of them wanted to be there, but they just couldn't. The way I see it,
Right.
they because they weren't making enough money for one. You know, if they were making enough money to take care of the family, then they wouldn't ask the government for assistance. And when you ask the government for assistance, you're gonna have to be out of that house in order for me to help your family. And man want to his family to survive. You know, so they sometimes they made that sacrifice. Okay, I'm gonna step aside so you can get that help, but I'm gonna come by and visit you, and I'm gonna give you the money that I can give you. You know, so man
Right.
didn't always just leave the family; they just stepped outside so they can get help. So that's the
Right.
way I'm looking at it, because they didn't have too much of a choice, because even when they wanted jobs, they didn't get the job. If they got a job, they weren't paying them enough, and sometimes they would cheat them out of their money. You know, so they didn't always make enough money to take care of the family.
Right.
So,
Well, when
so
we look at we have to look at the whole history of um, America and their relationship to black people. One of America's biggest problems has always been what to do with these black people. What do we do with them? Okay. Uh,
mhm.
we you got them in a position where they're working, and now they're in a position where when the Civil War came down, we were just entering somewhat of a, there was a change up. It's just like now with the technology, about every 100 years or every 50 years, everything changed. It went from hard, intense labor, even though they did continue to do hard, intense labor all the way up until the 80s. Uh, America said, well, we've got a new way of doing stuff. We're going to industrialize. We really don't need a lot of these bodies to be out there, picking up cotton, pulling sugar cane, and all that type stuff. Well, you got so many people here. Matter of fact, in Mississippi, there were more black folk in Mississippi than white people. At one time,
Still
there were more
is.
black folk. It still is. There were more black folk in Mississippi. That's why they came up with the 3/5 clause, because the people in Mississippi said, well, if we're going to vote, we want to count our Negroes. And the people in the North said, well, if you count them, they can't count. They'll count as 3/5. And that's how you got that 3/5 thing. When we say, we have to read the whole thing. We will say that white people say we only 3/5 human. Well, you got to understand, they might have thought that, but you got to know why they really put it in the Constitution. They put it in the Constitution because they didn't want. They said, well, they didn't want these massive amounts of black folk to change stuff. And even when you look at federal elections with the presidential elections, that's why you got the electoral college and all that type stuff. But you look at black males, and again, what do you do with them? Because even after Juneteenth, from what 1865, around 1870, you had what they call Reconstruction. Somebody said, well, we're gonna get them into the population, and they can run for public office. You had black senators. I think you had a couple of black governors doing Reconstruction. We call those the forgotten years. 10 years that just you don't even bring up until somebody says he's the first black senator in the state of Georgia since Reconstruction. Georgia had about 3 senators, black senators. South Carolina had about 3 black senators. Mississippi had more than anybody, about 4 or 5.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, all this during Reconstruction. They was in the House of Representatives and the Senate, United States Senate. And you said, well, what happened?
Yeah.
Somewhere, you know, if they give you something, they can always take it back.
Yeah, they
If they
decided they
give
didn't
you
want to be
something,
represented by those people.
yeah, they can always take it back. So they started taking it back. They started burning up. You look at the short period of black performance from 1863 to 1873 with Reconstruction, and even after Reconstruction was being this 1873 to 1883, and then you look at from 1883 to what around 1903, you got Black prosperity, Black Wall Streets. In about 30, 40 years, Black folk had went from zero to hero. They had left and accumulated more than some of the slave owners. They had definitely outpaced a lot of broke white people.
Yeah, and they didn't like that either.
They did not like that. So that's when you started. Because think about it, they weren't hanging Black folk doing slavery.
No. They came
Not in big numbers.
afterwards. If
Yeah,
they
because they
did
needed
hang
that
on,
labor.
yeah, they might
They
have
might
beat
have beat
them
them.
to death and cut their limbs
Yeah,
off, but
yeah.
they didn't do a lot of hanging. No, but
Because they needed
sometimes
that
if
black
they
heart.
ran away, though, they might have killed them.
Yeah, but
Sometimes.
no, but even then, they you know what? As a last resort, they would hang that slave because they cut
Yeah.
his foot off, they neuter him, they cut his genitals off, all kind of stuff to minimize and keep him captive. The America changed and went into hanging Black folk when Black folks started accumulating property.
Yeah, because then they didn't have nothing to lose. It
No,
wasn't their property anymore, so they could kill it or mutilate it or whatever they wanted to do with it.
Yeah, out of jealousy.
And that was a problem for the males too. For fathers who wanted to take care of their families, and if they got too smart, it's dangerous. But then if they weren't smart enough, if their family suffers. So that was a problem because, like, a lot of the slaves, they had skills and they used those skills to make a living afterwards. Blacksmith and whatever other talents they had. They used those skills to start their own businesses. And when they were making too much money, white man didn't like that, so they had to chop them down. And so, that did a self-esteem thing for the men who wanted to support their families, but then they knew if they get too high, something could happen to them. They may disappear or something.
Yeah, how the hog. And this was jealousy. They say they were too high on the hog. This was jealousy. Now think about this. Now this is from 1860, from 1863, after the Civil War. We're talking about 40 years. In 40 years, between 1863 and 1900, Black folk had accumulated a lot. You had whether you had Black Wall Street down in Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia. Down in Georgia, you had families that came up during that time period. No matter where you go, you always see a prominent Black family. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, somewhere around we call these the traumatic years in America. Around America started suffering somewhere between 1908, right before World War I, and the Great Depression, 1929. Okay, Black folk were so prominent that during the Great Depression, they were feeding white people. They had to come to them to get food. Okay, now you say, well, and then that meant that some white people didn't have a lot of hate. So you say, well, what happened? Well, they had to turn it up again because Black folk were too prominent. They didn't want. Somebody always says or thinks, what do we do with the Black people in America? So now you got to put Jim Crow. You got to put segregation laws in there. You got to put vagrancy laws. They started putting so many laws, and those laws are still on the books in the South. Those laws are still on the books in the South.
You couldn't have those uppity Negroes.
Yes. Oh, and look, there are many people that have relatives. Even Clarence Thomas. Clarence Thomas grew up in South, Southeast, around the coast, Brunswick, and all like that. His granddad, he was raised by his granddaddy, right there in rural Georgia. And his granddaddy during that time period was somewhat of a prominent black man, meaning that he grew food, went into town, and all that. So Clarence Thomas comes with a great work ethic. The same with so many black people. But if you came into town, you went to sell some your crops or even your livestock, and you had a disagreement with a white person, they either kill you, and this was the first breakdown of some of the black families. They started killing black men. Okay, they started killing black men. So that put a inferiority complex in a lot of men. We talk about the Willie Liz letter, but when they kill you they kill your daddy right in front of you. Or you go, matter of fact, I think this down in the 30s, between the Great Depression and right before World War II, a lot of black folk got hung, black men. They were either hung because they were successful, and these are fathers. Imagine fathers being taken out of the household, and then you had other things that was happening too. But these are self-inflicted wounds from white America on black.
Yeah, not only were they hung, but they put them in jail too. Got that free labor. They still found a way to enslave them.
Yeah, the chain gang. The chain gang. They started the chain gang.
You didn't have
never
enough
had
money in your pocket. You go into jail, and then they rip you out.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They farmed so much later. We just go through and that's the second 40 years. We talking about the first 40 years from what 1863 to like 1903. Then the Klan started rising up. Woodrow Wilson shows the movie Birth of a Nation. They started having when the television back then, the black and white shows, they had to make the black folk look bad. They had them eating watermelon. All the minstrel shows came out. That's when the first use of what they call blackface or whiteface came out. They did everything they could to demean the black male. Now that's the second 40 years. And then after World War II, black men, for the first time, even for a lot of white men, that was their first time leaving out of America. That's when people were looking for tails, because white people said, well, yeah, they got tails. All kinds of stuff. Brothers went to Europe, and some of them brought back white women, Germans and French and Italian. And when they came back, these white men couldn't stand that.
No,
they wasn't trying to get they wasn't trying to get the white women from over here because they knew they couldn't get them without a problem. But they were bringing back white women from France and all these, and some brothers stayed in Europe. They didn't even come back. They stayed in Europe, for a long time. Started families and stuff, and that's the second 40. And then we look at from 1940 something to the 80s. Black folks started to accumulate some stuff. Between somewhere around the 60s when they came up with the welfare system and all that type stuff. And then, look what they did. They put crack cocaine. I call those the forgotten. That's another part of forgotten year, where black families were infiltrated with crack cocaine on purpose. On purpose. Yeah. They made a drug just for black folks.
Yeah, that's bad. Now, when you were talking about, the black men staying in Germany, did you know that they had a law that blacks and whites couldn't get married here in the States? So,
they're still on the book.
Yeah, but I think they canceled that. I'm tempted to say
that law is still on the books. I forgot it was the case, but that law is still on the book. That what they call interracial marriage.
Interracial marriages, okay. Yeah, but I thought that somewhere along the line they said that they made a rule where they can get married. because it was a
Well,
couple that
that didn't.
fought it because they put them
Yeah,
in jail for doing that.
yeah, and they didn't get that until somewhere around the 70s or the 80s, right before Reagan became president.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what year it was. I'm thinking it was like the 60s or 70s, but you saying 70s or 80s.
Yeah,
But
yeah, it was that recent.
Yeah, yeah, it was. And you know what? And sad to say, the white people said that black people had tails. My brother, when he went to Germany, when the German women asked to see his tail,
Oh yeah,
because
it
she
wasn't
obviously,
uncommon.
huh?
It was not uncommon.
Yeah. But I thought it was hilarious, and at the same time, I thought it was shameful. Why would anybody even say stuff like that? You know?
Well, now once again, we go back. Now we just talking about from Juneteenth after the Civil War. America's biggest problem is what to do with the black folk that they got over here. One of the first things they did was to demeanor them, make them feel less. That's why, like I said, in 40 years, we went from nothing to something. Not all of us, but we achieved some degree of prosperity somewhere around 1900s. Then they started burning. There are over 100 black, you call them towns and villages, burnt to the ground between 1900 and 1914. Here in Atlanta, they burnt folk out. They flooded people. They got a little bit more sophisticated and started flooding towns. And whatever. And that happened after they burned them. They just were burning out whole towns down in Florida. They just got their money down in Georgia, South Georgia. The little bit that black folk had, people could not stand to see that the backlash. Okay, and we just going through the years every 40 years. Now look, we in the next 40 from what 1980 all the way up to now, maybe 40, 50 years. This another thing. Look, since Reagan, we made some accomplishment. We got our second federal holiday. Martin Luther King Day came under Reagan. Juneteenth came under Biden. Okay, but there's still a backlash because you look at anytime it looks as though black people are moving forward, somebody else comes in and gets some of the pie. Somebody else comes in and gets some of the pie. You know, uh, that's one reason I'm semi-divided on Juneteenth. I would rather it had been kept for us, our way. See, we kept it for all over 18 from what 1863, 1865 to 1965 is 100 years. We almost kept it for 200 years. What 150 years, Juneteenth, and then they took it and made it a federal holiday. When they made it a federal holiday, it becomes part of everything. I saw, and not to put it down to anything, but CNN had a Juneteenth celebration last night. It was live. They had so many celebrations, and what happens? Black people are pushed further and further from the essence and the meaning of Juneteenth. Because it's just like Martin Luther King Day. They said, well, we want you to go out and plant flowers and clean up the city. You know, so we lose what was the initial thing. Because the initial thing in Juneteenth was to go out and get your family. That encompasses Father's Day and all this stuff, Mother's Day, because you're going out to get the children, get the baby. Reading a family reunion. Those were the first initiative of Black family reunion. But no one, it sounds too good for Black folk to have a family reunion without somebody telling them. I think you went. I can't hear you there, Miss Sylvia. Your audio went out again. Your audio's out. But uh but when someone else dictates to us how to observe something that's unique to us, we say they are stealing our culture. Uh Other people are coming in and hijacking the holiday. And I can see that. I can see that. There's so many other groups. Not and black people are a peculiar group of people. We're a peculiar group of people. Uh, One of the things that like I said, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Uh, we just took Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Juneteenth federal holiday was the 19th. So there's a lot of cities and towns that are enacting Juneteenth celebration. And if we as black folk don't get in there and kind of dictate what it should be like, it ain't gonna be nothing like what we know it should be. For instance, you would not catch a federal what Holocaust Day or a Hanukkah Day because what it is, it takes away from the people that it means something to. See, when we get federal days, they become capital. They're driven by capital. That means that they can put a honey bun, a gadget, or anything up. They make more money. They make you into a consumer versus what? The original intent is to pay attention to your history. Look and see what the people were doing. And then you look and see why they were in that position. When we look at, especially black people, reparations, these conversations don't come up. You say, whoa. You start looking, you start scratching your head. You say, man, whoa. And we can just say, we don't even have to go back to 1619. It gets crazier. We don't even have to go back to the first black captured people to be brought over here. 1619, what we say 400-500 years of slavery. We can just take from 1865, and we say, whoa, America owes us something. I mean, not based on nothing but what we've done. Okay, when you look at uh, a lot of the towns and villages that were burned down, and then you fast forward, you look at black men that were taken out of the equation during the 80s. During the 80s, when black men were the drug wars, that's when you had from 1980 up until probably 2000. That's like 20 years of robbing black people of black men. 20 years from 1980 to the year 2000. You had 3 strikes, you're out. We got excited. We said the first black president, Bill Clinton. Remember him? Mm-mm. Slick Willie. I think Bill Clinton came on board, did 2 terms. Black folk put him in. And him, even back then, Joe Biden, 3 strikes, you're out. Some more black folk got locked up. Black men. They took the pride of the black family and got them locked up. Either they were on drugs or doing drugs. Either they were doing drugs or selling drugs. Or they was a byproduct of the people that was doing drugs and selling drugs. From 1980 to the year 2000. And even this, but it was a big campaign for, I'm talking 20 years of consistency. And this was backed by the government. Reagan administration. What's the guy? Oliver North went down there and got all that drug, just to save the United States, make some money. Goes right back again. Who can we exploit? Who can we take advantage of? Who can we put in that position? And so when you look at black people here in America, that's why Juneteenth is kind of it's a double-edged sword. On one side, we say, well, how can we maintain our own integrity? How can we be or do something that means something to black people first? Okay, because every other group can do something like that. Uh, there are holidays that groups celebrate that we don't even know about. There are holidays that groups celebrate that we don't even know about. There are holidays or times or rituals that people celebrate that we don't know about. You know why we don't know about them? Because they practice these traditions and rituals amongst themselves. Hey there, Miss Sylvia, your audio back?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Ah, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Sounding good. Power to the people.
Okay. Yep. Power to the people. Yeah, there are a lot of holidays that other people don't that they celebrate amongst themselves.
Oh,
There
yeah.
are. But shoot,
Yeah.
but we have our own holidays, and my thing is I hate that they want to commercialize it. So it's like a personal thing. You take our personal stuff and commercialize and make money off of it for themselves.
Well,
I do not like that.
well, and we have to hold true to certain things. That's why I say it would have been better for us to get a reparation package than a federal holiday. It would have been better for us to get a reparation package than a federal holiday. Okay, if America had counted the check out and say, you know what, we messed up. We ain't gonna do nothing from 1619 to 1860, but from 1865 to now, we're gonna cut y'all a check. That's what Martin Luther King said. We come to get our check. Well, America, it doesn't surprise me. Anytime you allow somebody else to dictate your parameters, that's like the family. When you allow somebody else to come in and say, okay, family can't be the family. If we're gonna write the check, daddy can't be in the house. Or if you got an organization, look at it, a lot of our organization. If you got anybody writing the check, you don't have an organization. Look at a lot of our schools, even our HBCUs that were mostly named for white people.
And a lot of people don't even know that.
Right. And so a lot of the money is that I doubt I given some money, but I didn't give them a lot of money to my alma mater. Just didn't do it. That means somebody else controls the actions and efforts of that particular place. Well, until black people develop ownership of themselves, and I think we're starting to do it because we're starting to figure this math out. Okay,
yeah,
we starting to see America exploit anything. They'll take Jesus and put him with a video with Jesus, the Easter Bunny, and Santa Claus. That's just America. This is a
all
capitalist
in the
way.
name of Christianity.
Yeah, well, they'll call it anything. They'll just lump it all together because it's a money drip, just like keeping black folk as slaves another 2 years. And it was even longer than that, but 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. But white America, part of white supremacy is until we understand white supremacy, we won't understand nothing. Until we
Right.
understand white supremacy, won't nothing make sense. So we got to say, whoa, we scratch our head and say, well, why won't they just let us be free? Sojourner Truth said it. I think women's suffrage came and there was women's rights to vote. And she said, ain't I a woman too? They said, she looked like a woman, but she can't be like the white woman. But fast forward, all these things, I think now, because you can say we the woke generation, we just can't get a lot of distraction. I think Juneteenth can still be meaningful to black people if we understand how it relates to the black family. When black folk looking, that meant that men went looking for their sons and daughters, their wives or whoever. Women, everybody went looking for each other. And they didn't have no cell phone. They didn't have no internet. They didn't have no social media. They had to put feet on the ground and ask, "Do you know this one, that? Oh yeah, they over there. You know what's in that? Oh yeah. They look just like this. They look like this. Yeah, they over there." And that's how we found our family. Now, did they find all of them? No. We still looking
No.
for each other.
Yeah, it's true.
There's
But I
always
am
been
so glad now that men are stepping up to the plate and taking care of their
that.
families. Yeah, they are stepping up to the plate because I know, like my nephews, man, I am so proud of them for taking care of their families. They're there supporting them all the way, coaching and everything. They're right there with their kids every step of the way. So I
Mhm.
am very proud of them for doing that. And I see other families who are the same way, other men who are stepping up to the plate and supporting their children, let them know that they love them. And even though sometimes they get knocked down or whatever, they still standing up and trying to be strong for their kids. So
Mm.
that is important. That is important. And I got to say kudos to the dads who want to do better for themselves and not let the man keep them down. You know, they
Oh,
believe in entrepreneurship. And so they want to do entrepreneurship and teach their kids how to be entrepreneurs. You know, so
right.
that's important right there because you can't always say, I can't do this because they won't let me. They always putting me down. You got to stand up sometime and say, no, I'm not letting you put your foot on my back. No, I'm standing straight up, you know,
Right up.
and I'm
Yeah.
going to do what I need to do for me. You, because they'll do it. They will hold you down. So I'm proud of the men who are standing up and trying to be men, trying to be fathers for their kids because it's important. The children need role models and they need your support. So kudos to all the fathers who's out there
And
trying to be good dads.
and the black man has always been a role model to his family. We have to change that narrative. No matter what's out there, we are the first family of humanity. We are the family that's
Mm,
compassionate, considerate, and show empathy, even though there have been many mechanisms to break us down, to break us down. Right here in America, right now, we are the strongest nation within a nation, black people. We're the strongest nation within this nation, black people,
yeah,
bar none. Now, that means that there's a lot of distractions. There's a lot of darts being thrown at us. You look at the news, people saying, well, they had all these shootings, they this and that, and all this and that. But when black folk start recognizing, just like they did on that Monday, 1865, June the 19th, they said, we ain't free unless all of us. And they went looking for their family, black family reunion. Jubilee Day.
yeah. And still I rise.
Oh, yeah. We like that dunk in the ditch. They threw bricks and dirt all down in there. All we did was shake it off. And you know what
Yeah,
happened? We walked right out of that ditch. Then they put another hole. There's always somebody trying to control the actions and efforts of the so-called black man here in America.
yeah.
Okay, so
And trying to keep
what?
them down, keep them from being successful, make them feel like
Mhm.
they're second class or third class, but they don't. They're not taking that. They're standing
So
up.
we have to. Oh yeah, freedom ain't free. We got to fight for this every day.
Right.
We have to fight for every day. When we see, we have to be like other culture. Even when we see ignorance within our community, we have to look at. And plus, we are a community that can check itself. We can check America, and we know how to check ourselves. We know right from wrong better than anybody. We the first family on the planet of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
You know how
Yeah,
to
we
treat
are.
you. You know what? You can throw anybody in any community amongst black folk and watch what happens. They won't get
What will
mistreated.
happen?
Well, look, any group I've seen white people walk down black neighborhoods. I've seen Indians, Pakistanis, Mexicans, all kind of folk. Now, when we rob, now it's our nature to love people.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's in us. It's not in our nature to knock you in the head. there are more people comfortable with stores in black neighborhood. That's one reason they come to black neighborhood. Once you know and whatever goes down, whether you're a Chinese immigrant, a Hispanic, or Indian, or Pakistan, or Russian. I know a Russian brother got 3 stores right in the hood. He ain't never had a problem. Now, if you step to us wrong, you might have a problem. Okay? So we ain't gonna take crap from nobody. You know, we the most resilient people, and we're the most honorable and loyal people. You know, so so our men and our women and our children. So these narratives they put on the news, and we see all this crazy stuff, black folk killing each other, knocking each other in the head. A lot of that is a lot of propaganda just to move and motivate us to think that we less than anything. Because we look at the news, and man, I almost felt good till I saw the news. Stop watching the news.
Yeah, but you know what? They put all that stuff out there about black people, but I discover more white people do things than the black ones. They just don't put it on the news.
I'm gonna give you this. I'm gonna share this with you. Now, the 4th of July is coming up. Now, I've seen 63 4th of July. This will be my 64th 4th of July. In America, they will suppress any wrongdoing during that period. You know, you won't see white on white crime. You won't see people shooting each other until after the 4th of July. Now, you might see it on July the 7th. You say, man, they got a major shooting up in here and this and that. They're not going to broadcast that. America does not do anything to make itself look bad. But because we thinking during our holidays, they will do anything to make it look like what? We jacked up, we acting up, we behaving crazy. I've gone over the weekend. I actually went to one Juneteenth celebration. That was Friday, and there was no incident, but it did not make the news. It did not make the news. I heard about so many more, whether in Atlanta, the West End, down to Snellville, Learburn, wherever black folk gathered, there was no nonsense.
Right.
Yeah.
So it will be like that, and they always want to make you look bad, but we're standing tall.
But check this out. Definitely, whenever we got in the next couple, we got 2 weeks, 4th of July. America will just, you won't even see white crime. Everything's about America the beautiful, America the great. You know, God bless America. And we have to do the same thing with our house. We have to, you know, they do like this. They cover their eyes. Watch July the 4th. It ain't gonna be nothing but red, white, and blue. Me and you. God bless America. But Juneteenth, we love it. Love the black fathers and the whole black family. Stay black.
Yeah, stay black. Yeah, well, it's time for us to go. I just want to say kudos to all the fathers who've been taking care of their kids, their families, who stood up and did what you need to do to have a healthy relationship with your family. It is so important that you do, and just keep up the good work. And so until next time, we're just going to say, take care and have a good evening.